It's time to go beyond the headlines, cause I don't put in overtime just so I can headline. Okay, now it's Fox Sports, I'm live with Renee. Going hard every day, sports rapping every play. Different segments for your favorites, coming at you daily with positive vibes, yeah, we some game changers. Basketball, football, soccer, with different interviews, you never know who may pop up. Listen, only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington.
Joining Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington from the West Coast in LA, we've got Nick Hamilton, a world sports and entertainment reporter. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Renee. I appreciate it.
I am happy to have you here because we've got a lot to get into, and we're going to start off with the Rams. Coming off of making their Super Bowl run where we saw them lose to the Patriots last year, a lot of people were curious how the Los Angeles Rams were going to come into this season, rebound, and whether they'd pick up and get better or drop off this year. So we've seen them beat the Panthers, the Browns, of course the Saints in the game Drew Brees went down. Their first loss was this past weekend at Jameis Winston and Tampa Bay in what was quite a shootout. But what are your thoughts on the Rams coming into this season so far from what you've seen the first two games?
The Rams, as we expected, the Super Bowl, as they say, the Super Bowl hangover, but the defense has pretty much won the last few games when they were 3-0 before coming into the Tampa Bay game. You saw what happened in Cleveland, the last-second effort. The defense definitely put the brakes on Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns. Same thing with the New Orleans Saints. I mean, they were pretty much able to hold the New Orleans Saints to field goals up into the fourth quarter when the offense finally got rolling, and they were able to score and dominate in the fourth quarter. And the same thing with the Panthers. I mean, the Rams typically always have slow starts when their first game, especially since a lot of their starters don't play in the preseason. So I expected that. I expected the Rams to come out with a victory in week one. So the defense has really been playing consistently. I haven't been thoroughly impressed with the secondary, with Eric Weddle and Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib and those guys. But I think it may take some time for them to get going. But once they get revved up and get going, they're going to be a pretty formidable opponent in that secondary. The offense has been questionable from game one to where we are right now. And I said this before, that the offense is going to have an opportunity for, you keep paying the piper, you're going to get cashed out. And so, sure enough, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they got cashed out, and they got cashed out in a big way by a huge L. I mean, the Tampa Bay Bucs dropped a record-setting 55 points on the road against the Rams. I mean, they had the Rams up 21-0. Madden rules, you got to give up the sticks. Fortunately, they were able to score a touchdown, so it became 21-7, and they were able to stay in the game. And they made a nice little comeback midway in the third quarter, but they just did not able to capitalize on opportunity. They missed a 2-point conversion, which dropped them back by 5. They were down 45-40. But just terrible decision-making by Jared Goff. I know he had 68 attempts. He completed 45 of those attempts, over 500 yards in passing, but he had 3 crucial interceptions. And the thing that stuck out to me was the fact that when you look at what Jared Goff had been doing, Shaquille Barrett had been giving him fits on 2 of those interceptions. The same Shaquille Barrett that gave Daniel Jones fits the week prior against the New York Giants. So, to me, I don't necessarily totally blame Jared Goff for that. I have to also look at Rob Havenstein, who missed 2 key blocks in those critical situations against Shaquille Barrett. The question has always been, what is the O-line going to do? Because the O-line has been suspect. I mean, they've been so suspect they should be under investigation because we don't know what the O-line is going to do because they have 2 rookies at the O-line, and it's going to take some time for Goff and that O-line to get used to each other and be able to start clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe Bleacher Report should investigate that too, since they're all over investigating things.
Hey, they got deep pockets.
In the DR. So you bring up some good points because the offense has been very questionable. It's leaving a lot of, that's something, in my opinion. You have Jared Goff coming back. You have players like Todd Gurley. you kind of assume that they would, and I hate to assume, but you just thought that they would come right in and almost have a little bit more confidence, having that experience of making a Super Bowl run. It can build you up, especially with such a young team and young coach in Sean McVay. But it has been, they've been struggling. And even this past week, you look at Todd Gurley's stats. I mean, where do you think they can really turn a corner here? How do you think they can really get back and get off the snuff to get back to being, a stronger offense than what they're doing right now?
I think, unfortunately, I know it's not the quickest fix, but I'm going to have to say timing. I think timing is going to be the key to curing it all because people have to get their rhythm. The Rams have failed to have a consistent rhythm offensively. I mean, I call in the last 4 games, Jared Goff has been 6-6. That means 6 TDs, 6 INTs, which is never a good thing. When I look at Todd Gurley on Sunday when he played against the Bucs, he had two nice touchdowns, but only on 5 carries for 16 yards. And that was surprising to me because that was the first time that Todd Gurley didn't have a double-digit carry since his rookie season with the Rams. But the Rams obviously seemed really comfortable with him catching the ball because he caught 7 passes for 54 yards. So there is a silver lining to a degree with Todd Gurley. I've always said with that knee situation, he's about 60 to 65% of himself. His ability to make those sharp cuts on a consistent basis, I think, is behind him. I think that Todd Gurley is going to have to learn how to play a different way. I still think that knee is an issue. I know Todd Gurley hates talking about it, and I don't blame him because every time you turn around, everybody's asking him about the knee, and that gets frustrating. And I totally understand him having short answers because he's frustrated. People forget Todd Gurley is a human being like all of us. He demands high quality of himself more than we demand of him. This man eats, drinks, and sleeps football. He loves the game of football, and he wants to be able to perform at a high level like we've seen him in years prior. So it's incredibly frustrating for him not to be able to be at that high level. But also, too, you have to look at what Jared Goff is doing and getting used to a new style of offense. Because remember, the style of offense that was played previously before Todd Gurley took that knee injury was that the offense pretty much centered around Gurley. Now that the offense is kind of starting to pull back from that and center more around Jared Goff and those wideouts, whether you look at Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Josh Reynolds, you look at, Gerald Everett, you look at Tyler Higbee, you look at Brandon Cooks. Those are now you have to be more creative with the offense, especially under Sean McVay. And the thing with Sean McVay is he can't implement changes at the next level. It just, you wonder about, again, I hate to sound redundant, but you have to go back to the O-line. You have to go back to guys that are on that O-line. You have basically, 2 rookies in Brian Allen and Joseph Noteboom replacing, former guys that were Roger Saffold and John Sullivan, who were veteran guys. So that takes time. And then adding insult to injury, obviously, with linebacker Bryce Hager, he got injured along with Taylor Rapp with a short week coming up against the Seattle Seahawks. That could potentially be a problem as well, because if Hager can't play, you got another rookie, again, talking about rookies, now on the defensive end with Troy Reeder that could start in Hager's place. So the Rams have a lot of things to figure out, not just offensively, but some things on the defensive side of the ball. But again, to answer your question, it's going to take timing. These guys have got to have timing. They got to find their rhythm. They got to be able to continue to gel with one another. And Jared Goff, I don't think it's an issue of confidence. I think it's just an issue of consistency.
That's a good point. Yeah, I do think you bring up a good point going back to Todd Gurley's knee injury. That affects any player, especially when you are so dynamic and explosive with cuts, and now you have what could be a lingering knee injury that, regardless if he wants to talk about it or not, might be impacting him. I mean, you look at his numbers last year to this year. This time last year, he was up to almost 80 carries and had like 15 receptions. This year, he's only got 49 in 4 games, an average of just over 12 carries per week. I mean, the numbers show that something has changed, and I think that is where, as you mentioned with Jared Goff and the offense, they have to adjust. If his game is changing and you can't rely on him and you now have to change his role in the offense as a whole has to change. So I do agree it's going to take time to figure out, what's the best offense and the best, formation and the best way they should be lining up to be successful each week consistently. So it's going to take time. It is only week 4. But unfortunately, it is week 4, well, now week 5, and with every week, with such a tight division, it is very important that you get as many wins as possible, which is common sense, but yes. Let's look at the other LA team, the Chargers. So we did see the return of Melvin Gordon, and he was active this past week, didn't play in the Chargers win over Miami, but he's expected to make his debut this week. But, of course, with him and his contract holdout, we saw Austin Eckler step up, and so there's the question mark of if Melvin Gordon's going to return back to being, the number one guy, or if he's going to be coming in and his role changes as well. What are your thoughts on Melvin Gordon's return?
Well, first of all, it's a huge shot in the arm, especially when you have so many guys that have been down. Unfortunately, guys like Hunter Henry. You have Mike Williams, who dealt with not only a knee issue but a back issue as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a huge boost in the arm when it comes to Phillip Rivers in that offense. Now, we talked to Anthony Lynn last week about what Melvin's role is going to be, and Anthony Lynn was very impressed with the fact of how much in shape Melvin Gordon came into camp, or came into the team, I should say. When you look at the time off that he took, obviously he had no football contact, but he remained in shape, and you could tell if you followed him on Instagram, you know what he was doing. He was constantly putting out updates on what his workout regimen was, what he was up to, what he was doing. Obviously, we saw him doing some acting with On Ballers on HBO, so he utilized the time very wisely. But I think Melvin Gordon, when I asked him directly, what made you decide to change your mind and come in this soon as opposed to, you originally said you were going to hold out until you got a deal. And his answer was simply, hey, man, 1 and 2. I miss playing football. I miss the guys. And, I just want to come back and be able to contribute in a productive manner. And then we asked Anthony Lynn, okay, well, what will Melvin's role be now that you had a double dose of Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson? And he said, well, obviously Melvin's our number one guy, so he's going to be starting whenever we clear him to come back. He's going to be the starting running back, and Austin Eckler is going to be back with the number 2 spot. And then, Austin Eckler never had a problem. Austin Eckler is a very team-oriented guy. There's no attitude. There's no ego. He said, hey, whatever the team needs me to do, whatever role I have to play, then that's the role I'm going to play. So I expect Melvin Gordon to come out October 6th, which is this Sunday, against the Denver Broncos. Fortunately for the Chargers, they don't have to deal with Bradley Chubb, who was out for the year with a torn ACL.
Right.
So that kind of helps their running game as well a little bit more. That's less they have to be concerned with, unfortunately, for that young man. His season ends. But fortunately for the Chargers, that may be a boost in the arm as well to be able to get going offensively and quickly. But like I said, Melvin is fine. He's happy. I expect him to be better this week. He'll have a lot more reps in practice this week, which I was not surprised him not playing against the Miami Dolphins, for God's sakes. It is the Miami Dolphins. I mean, you and I and a high school team would go out there and beat that team. You don't need Melvin Gordon or risk injury.
No.
Put Melvin Gordon in there. Plus, he didn't have enough reps. He only had 2 days' worth of reps, and that's nearly not enough time to play in the NFL game. So I think it was smart for them to activate him to make the Dolphins think that he has the possibility of playing, but I think that was more strategical than actual physical for him to come into the game. I don't think they had any plans. The coaching staff had any plans. Ken Wisenhunt or Anthony Glenn had any plans of Melvin Gordon coming into the Dolphins and actually playing with reps. His target date is Sunday, and look forward to having him back out on the field. I know he'll be glad. A lot of teammates will be glad, and the fans will be glad as well.
Yeah, I'm happy that he's back, too. I mean, we've seen contract holdouts in the past. Le'Veon Bell's one that definitely comes to mind. But, I think more than just what we're seeing with Melvin Gordon specifically in his return and not being able to get a trade that would make sense or anything like that. So the best long-term decision was to return, was to come back and play. And I do like the fact that, though, he did stay active. He was constantly promoting and posting what he's doing. It wasn't anything like negative. It was like, you know what, I'm still here grinding, I'm still here working. When I get back, I'm going to be back ready to go. But more important than just that, it's another player, and we talked about this on my show in the past, that's really changing the culture of the NFL, where players are more actively having a voice and not just sitting back and letting, accepting whatever contract they're getting, whatever deal they're getting. He wanted a new contract from his rookie contract. He wanted something different, and he spoke up about it. And although it may not have gone the way he had planned, he still voiced his opinion and was heard one way or another. And I think that's the shift that we've been seeing the last couple of years with NFL players. You see it in other sports like the NBA, which automatically comes to mind, where players do have more voice and say, I want to be traded, I want to go here, I want this contract, and have, more of a role in their own future. God forbid you have a role in your own future, right? So talk to me about your thoughts from week 4 as we're getting ready to, Thursday Night Football is going to be here before we know it. Any surprises that you saw in week 4? I know it was another week we saw some injuries. We saw some players go down with ACLs and shoulder injuries. Any teams that really surprised you, aside from my Eagles winning Thursday night, of course, that you saw from this past
There
week?
you go.
I had to just stop it in. I brought you on the show. You're West Coast, so it's getting away from the Eagles, but I got to always mention the Eagles when I can.
As you should. No, the biggest surprise to me was the Saints and Cowboys game from different perspectives. One, the Cowboys only being allowed to score 10 points when you have that high-powered offense led by Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, and those guys. To only be able to score 10 points is something going on with that offense. And, again, it could just be one bad game. I mean, everybody's entitled to a bad game or two. It's a long 16-game season. It's a long, grueling 16-game season. So, you're going to have those bumps and bruises. But to me, everybody's looking at the Saints beating the Cowboys, but I wasn't that thoroughly impressed with the Saints, even though I like Teddy Bridgewater, and I think Teddy Bridgewater did a decent job. But they only scored 12 points. That's not it. I mean, when you're beating a team like the Cowboys and you're only able to score 12 points in a win, that's not impressive at all. So I wasn't too impressed with the Saints win, even though they got the W. A W's a W. But I look at that Saints team, and I'm like, okay, what do you have to do the following week? Because the NFC South is not going to be a cakewalk. I mean, you got the Atlanta Falcons. The Carolina Panthers seem to be gelling with their new quarterback. We'll see what they do the following week coming up. But it's a lot of factors. And then when does Drew Brees come back? Some are saying 6 weeks. It could be longer than 6 weeks. We don't know. Teddy Bridgewater is more than capable of leading that team, obviously, down the field and being successful at it. But how long will you scoring, be able to have that offense only score 12 points against a good team? You will lose. If I told you that the Saints only scored 12 points, the first thing that come to mind is, oh damn, they got spanked. By whom? That most people would think that. Why? Because it's 12 points
right.
with that offense, right? And they have a very nice offense. But I just wasn't. I just wasn't impressed by it. Trying to get into the end zone. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater didn't even throw a pass into the end zone, which was surprising. Kamara only had 69 yards. They struggled offensively.
Yeah, that was a game that was very surprising. Of course, I'm glad you brought it up and not me, because I was thrilled to see the Cowboys finally lose. Gosh.
I'm sure you were.
In a week. Yeah, it took 4 weeks, but I'm happy they finally lost and we won, because I'm tired of seeing it the other way around. And but looking at that game, it was surprising on both sides. Offensively, for such a low-scoring game, when you look at the players that are on the field, you mentioned Alvin Kamara, the game that Dak had and Ezekiel Elliott, I know he did finish with a touchdown, but it just was not a good game on either side. It was kind of like I don't know what happened, but it was very what's the best word? Just the overall performance was not great. I love high-scoring games, but I'm like, this is just it was bad football.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was horrific football offensively. I mean, you got the $100 million man, didn't even have 100 yards receiving in the game, no touchdown. 3 of your biggest guys offensively were shut down. And the only touchdown scored was obviously by Zeke, and that still came up short. You kicked nothing but field goal. You were not able. The Dallas. You have to give some credit to the Dallas defense as well, because they prevented Teddy Bridgewater and that high-powered offense from getting into the end zone, which is remarkable on the road in a hostile environment like the Mercedes-Benz Dome. So, to me, I think more credit should sway to the Dallas defense than overly criticizing the Dallas offense, but also not being critical enough of the Saints offense that was stagnant majority of the game.
Right. And without Drew Brees in these next few weeks, I mean, they're going to need to be more active, especially players like Alvin Kamara.
You're going to have to get the damn end zone. It's just that simple.
Yeah, you do. Plain and simple. Well, Nick, where can our listeners follow you on social media to keep up with your sports and entertainment coverage?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. You can follow me on all things social media at Nick Hamilton LA. I'm always out and about, so you'll catch me on the sports side, on the pop culture side, the entertainment side. Let me tell you, before I got on your show today, I was just listening to the Damian Lillard response to Shaq, and that thing is fire. Shaq's was good too. Shaq's was heat, but Dame Dollar was fire. He was taking no shorts.
He is something else, man. I
Dame
gain more and more
can spit
respect
balls.
for Dame. Yes. I gain more and more respect for him. His rap game is on point. His basketball, I feel like he's playing the best basketball he's played. Don't sleep on Dame.
His best life. Yeah, he's living his best life. I've always said athletes, when it comes to rapping, two of the best athletes to rap were Shaq and Dame Dollar. Like everybody else, forget. Who cares? But those two can spit. They can spit.
Yes.
Shaq laid the foundation. Dame is taking the torch and running with it. So hopefully we may get a collaboration maybe a year from now. Hopefully we get a collab between Shaq and Dame Dollar. But right now, that ain't happening. And it's like Earl Spence and Sean Porter the other night. They going back trading blows.
Yes. Yep. He said he's a better rapper, and then he dropped with it. So.
And then went to practice.
Yeah. And then went to practice. Yep.
Hang that on your hat.
I love it. This is the type of stuff that keeps sports so entertaining. But thank you so much for joining Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington this week. I'd love to have you on again. So there's always so much to talk about. So, yes, thank you.
Anytime. Thank you so much. And continue success with what you're doing. Let's get it.